Captain Laura Martinez gazed out the viewport of the USS Intrepid as the massive space station came into view. Nexus Station floated against the backdrop of swirling nebula gases, its ring-shaped structure gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. "Impressive," she said, straightening her uniform jacket. "Hard to believe it houses representatives from over 200 species." Ambassador Eric Johnson nodded beside her. "And now humans join that list. 3 years since first contact, and here we are, invited to help negotiate peace between species that have been spacefaring for millennia." The Intrepid slowed as it approached the docking bay. Laura felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Humanity's invitation to the Galactic Conclave had come surprisingly quickly after Earth discovered it wasn't alone in the universe. Even more surprising was the request for humans to help mediate a territorial dispute between the Vesperi Empire and the Aquari Republic, 2 powerful species with very different biology and cultures. "Captain Ambassador," called Communications Officer Sam Miller from his station, "we're receiving docking instructions. Also, our liaison is requesting to come aboard before we dock. Says it's standard procedure." "Permission granted," Laura replied. 10 minutes later, the airlock hissed open. Laura and Eric stood ready to greet their alien contact, but both struggled to hide their surprise when the creature ducked through the doorway. Their liaison stood nearly 7 feet tall with a slender, almost skeletal frame. Its skin was pale blue and 4 arms emerged from its torso. The being's face featured large oval eyes that blinked vertically and what appeared to be vibrating mandibles instead of a mouth. "Greetings," the alien said, its voice emerging from a translation device attached to its upper chest. "I am Zextor, diplomatic liaison for Nexus Station. Welcome to Conclave Space." Eric stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Thank you for the welcome. I'm Ambassador Eric Johnson, and this is Captain Laura Martinez of the USS Intrepid." Zextor took a quick step backward when Eric moved. His mandibles clicked rapidly. "Is something wrong?" Laura asked. No, Zextor said quickly, blinking several times. Just, adjusting to your presence. Humans move differently than most species." "Differently?" Eric questioned. "More suddenly. It is nothing to concern yourselves with." Zextor's upper arms made a gesture that might have been meant to be reassuring. "I have studied your species extensively since being assigned as your liaison. I am well prepared. Despite these words, Laura noticed how the alien kept careful distance between them as they walked to the conference room for briefing. She also caught Zextor watching their legs with what seemed like nervous fascination. In the conference room, Zextor remained standing while the humans sat at the table. Laura noted that the chairs provided were unusually sturdy, as if designed for creatures much heavier than humans. "The peace negotiations begin tomorrow," Zextor explained. "The dispute between the Vesperi and Aquari has continued for nearly 50 Earth years. It centers on mining rights to a small moon rich in rare elements." "We've reviewed the briefing materials," Eric said. "But I'm curious why the Conclave requested human negotiators. We're newcomers with no experience in your politics." Zextor's mandibles clicked again. "That is precisely why. You have no established alliances or biases. Also, your species has a unique perspective that might prove useful." "What perspective is that?" Laura asked. "Your adaptability. Humans solve problems in ways other species find unexpected." Zextor paused. "However, I must brief you on proper diplomatic protocols. Your species has certain traits that might be misinterpreted by others." Laura and Eric exchanged confused glances. "Such as?" Eric prompted. "Your tendency to bare teeth when expressing positive emotions. To most carnivorous or omnivorous species in the Conclave, this is a threat display. I would advise keeping your mouths closed when smiling." Laura tried to process this information. "What else?" "Direct eye contact is considered aggressive by many species, particularly the Vesperi. They communicate primarily through pheromones and touch. The Aquari are less sensitive to this but prefer communication through color patterns on their skin. We'll do our best to adapt," Eric promised. "Also," Zextor continued, Please move slowly and deliberately around other species. Your locomotion method is unsettling to many. Our walking is unsettling, Laura asked, growing increasingly bewildered. The way humans can change direction instantly and accelerate quickly is reminiscent of apex predators on many worlds. Most sentient species evolved away from such movement patterns thousands of generations ago. Eric looked thoughtful. So basically, everything about us might seem threatening? Not everything, Zextor said diplomatically. Your intellectual capabilities and problem-solving skills are highly regarded. That is why you are here. After the briefing concluded, Zextor led them toward their quarters. As they walked through the station's wide corridors, Laura noticed other aliens giving them a wide berth. Some even stopped completely as they passed. I feel like I'm carrying some kind of disease, she whispered to Eric. More like they think we might eat them, he replied quietly. As they rounded a corner, Laura accidentally bumped into a tall, insect-like being with gleaming chitin plates and multiple compound eyes. She hadn't seen it approaching from a side corridor. I'm so sorry, she said instinctively, reaching out to steady the alien. The reaction was immediate and alarming. The insectoid creature reared back, emitting a high-pitched clicking sound. Its upper limbs raised defensively, and a strong, acrid smell filled the air. Suddenly, panels in the corridor wall slid open, and several security officers emerged. A mix of different species all holding what appeared to be weapons. What just happened? Eric whispered. I believe, Laura responded slowly. We may have just caused our first interstellar incident. Zextor stepped between the humans and the security team, speaking rapidly in a series of clicks and whistles. The insectoid alien was still backing away, its limbs trembling. That, Zextor said when he turned back to them, was Ambassador Kurzuk of the Vesperi Empire. You touched him without permission and moved toward him at what his species perceives as attack speed. It was an accident, Laura protested. Unfortunately, the Vesperi do not have a concept of physical accidents. Any unexpected contact is considered deliberate. The security team approached cautiously, surrounding them at a distance. Are we under arrest? Eric asked. No, Zextor replied. But you are requested to appear before the Conclave Council immediately to explain this incident. I should have been more thorough in my warnings. As they were escorted away, Laura noticed other aliens watching from doorways and corridor junctions, their expressions impossible to read but their body language suggesting alarm. I don't think this is how Earth's first peace negotiation was supposed to start, she murmured to Eric. Look at the bright side, he responded dryly. At least they're all too scared to start a fight with us. Laura didn't find that particularly comforting as they were led toward the Conclave Council chambers, where representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species were waiting to judge humanity's first diplomatic blunder. The Conclave Council chamber was a vast circular room with tiered seating that rose high above the central floor. Laura and Eric stood in the middle, feeling small as dozens of alien representatives looked down at them. The chamber was designed to accommodate beings of wildly different sizes and shapes. Some council members floated in special tanks while others perched on platforms or nestled in cocoon-like structures. Zextor stood to one side, acting as translator even though most species used universal translation devices. He seemed nervous, his four hands clasping and unclasping continuously. A large, gelatinous being with swirls of color moving beneath its transparent outer membrane spoke first. Its voice came through the translation system with a deep, resonant tone. I am Counselor Glix, current head of the Conclave Diplomatic Division. Humans, you stand accused of making a death threat against Ambassador Kurzuk of the Vesperi Empire. How do you respond? Eric stepped forward, careful to move slowly as instructed. Counselor, there has been a misunderstanding. Captain Martinez accidentally bumped into the ambassador. It was not intentional and certainly not a threat. The chamber filled with a buzz of translations and whispered comments. You moved at attack speed and bared your teeth, Counselor Glick stated. In Vesperi culture, this is an unmistakable threat display. Laura spoke up. I apologize for the misunderstanding. I was simply trying to prevent the ambassador from falling after our accidental contact. A new voice joined the conversation, a raspy, clicking sound that came from a section where several insectoid beings sat. The universal translator converted it to words. The human female approached at predator velocity and attempted physical contact. "This is not diplomatic behavior," said the Vesperi representative. "We request these creatures be restrained during negotiations." "That's absurd," Eric protested, then caught himself. "With respect, we pose no threat to anyone here. We came to help with peace talks, not to cause problems." Counselor Glix's colors shifted to a deeper blue. "Perhaps you do not understand how you appear to other species. Your movements, your facial expressions, your vocal patterns, all resemble those of evolved predators. Most sentient species in the conclave developed away from such traits long ago." "We can't change our biology," Laura said simply. "No," agreed Glix, "but you can modify your behaviors while among us. We will continue with the scheduled peace talks, but you must agree to certain restrictions." The restrictions were explained. Humans must keep at least 10 feet of distance from other delegates at all times, move at half their normal walking speed, avoid showing teeth, avoid direct eye contact for more than 3 seconds, and wear special sensors that would alert others if their heart rate or adrenaline levels increased. "This is ridiculous," Laura whispered to Eric as they left the council chamber. "It's that or go home," he replied quietly, "and Earth needs this alliance to work." Back in their quarters, they discovered another surprise. The room temperature was set much higher than comfortable for humans, and the air was unusually dry. "Is the environmental control broken?" Laura asked, already beginning to sweat. Zextor, who had accompanied them, made an apologetic gesture. "No, Captain. The station adjusted your quarters to what was believed to be human preference." "This must be 90 degrees, Eric complained. "Yes," confirmed Zextor. "Our research indicated humans evolved in hot, arid environments and prefer combat temperatures." "Combat temperatures?" Laura asked. "The temperature range in which your species hunts and fights most effectively," Zextor explained, as if this were obvious. Laura sighed. "We prefer room temperature, around 70 degrees. Zextor's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. "But that is hibernation temperature for many species." "Not for us," Eric said firmly. After Zextor left to adjust the environmental controls, Dr. Kevin Phillips, the delegation's science officer, joined them. He looked as uncomfortable as they felt. "I just had the strangest conversation with a group of aliens in the science division," he told them. "They wanted to know if it's true that humans can regenerate severed limbs." "What?" Laura exclaimed. "Of course not." "That's what I told them," Kevin said. "Then they asked if we really sleep lying down horizontally, completely vulnerable, for a third of each day. When I said yes, they looked horrified. One of them asked how we aren't all eaten by predators." "This keeps getting better," Eric muttered. Later that evening, they attended a diplomatic dinner with representatives from 12 species. The humans were seated at their own table, far from the others. Laura noticed that the utensils provided to them were made of soft, bendable material, unlike the fine metallic implements other delegates used. When Eric pulled out a standard dinner knife to cut his food, several aliens at nearby tables visibly recoiled. "What now?" he whispered to Zextor, who hovered nearby. "Metal cutting implements are considered weapons by most species," Zextor explained. "The fact that humans can handle them casually, without entering a battle trance, is disturbing to them." The situation grew more awkward when Laura drank a full glass of water in a few gulps. This caused a ripple of alarmed clicks and whistles through the room. "What did I do wrong now?" she asked Zextor. "You processed a significant volume of liquid very rapidly," he explained. "Most species would require specialized organs to filter toxins at that rate. They believe you just demonstrated an advanced defense against poison." After dinner, Kevin attempted to make friendly conversation with some Aquari scientists by mentioning he enjoyed a quick 5-mile run around the station's exercise ring that morning. "Your species runs for pleasure?" asked a horrified Aquari, its skin changing from blue to pale green. For 5 miles? It's good exercise, Kevin replied, confused by the reaction. Running is a danger response, the equarry explained. No, sentient species runs unless fleeing a predator or hunting prey. By the time they returned to their quarters, rumors were spreading throughout the station. Laura overheard security personnel discussing humans in hushed tones. They can process corrosive chemicals instantly, one said, and they cut their food with metal blades without entering battle trance. Another added, I heard they can chase prey for miles without stopping to rest. They're either highly evolved predators or genetically engineered super soldiers. Laura sighed as she removed her uncomfortable formal shoes. First day of peace negotiations, and we've convinced the entire station we're dangerous predators. Maybe we can use this to our advantage somehow, Eric suggested, loosening his tie. If they're all a little afraid of us, maybe the Vesperi and Equarry will listen more carefully to our suggestions tomorrow. Or maybe they'll decide we're too dangerous to keep around, Laura countered. Either way, tomorrow's going to be interesting. She couldn't have known just how true those words would prove to be. The next morning, Laura and her team prepared for the first official peace negotiation session. They discussed strategies in their quarters, which had finally been adjusted to a comfortable temperature. Remember, Eric told them, move slowly, don't smile with your teeth showing, and keep your distance. We need these talks to succeed. It's like walking on eggshells, Kevin complained. I can't believe our normal behavior scares them so much. Laura checked her uniform in the mirror. We're the newcomers here. We need to adapt to their customs, not the other way around. When they arrived at the conference chamber, representatives from 30 species were already seated in a large circular arrangement. The Vesperi delegation occupied one section, their insectoid forms clustered together. Across the room, the Equarry representatives sat in special humidified seats, their amphibious skin glistening under the lights. As the humans entered, conversations stopped. All eyes, stalks, sensors, and other visual organs turned toward them. Laura felt like a shark entering a pool of minnows. Zextor guided them to their designated seats, which were positioned between the two disputing parties, but at a greater distance than other delegations. The head conclave moderator, a tall being with feathery appendages, opened the session. We gathered to resolve the territorial dispute over the moon Exilian IV between the Vesperi Empire and the Equarry Republic. As neutral mediators, we welcome the human delegation from Earth. This introduction was met with clicking sounds from the Vesperi and color changes from the Equarry that the translation devices didn't convert. Laura noticed the room was uncomfortably warm. As the discussions began, she felt herself starting to sweat in her formal uniform jacket. After listening to an hour of complex territorial claims involving resource rights and historical settlements, she discreetly removed her jacket, leaving just her uniform shirt. Immediately, several gasps and alarmed whistles echoed through the chamber. The Vesperi delegation's clicking grew louder, and one of them stood up abruptly. What now? Eric whispered to Zextor, who had moved closer to them. The captain has revealed her musculature, Zextor explained quietly. Such physical development is concerning to many species. Laura looked down at her arms, confused. She was fit, but hardly a bodybuilder. These are just normal human arms, she whispered back. For most sentient species, such muscle definition indicates a dangerous physical combatant, Zextor said. Most races evolved away from physical strength, relying on technology instead. The lead Vesperi representative spoke through its translator. We request additional security measures. The human female has revealed her combat physiology. Laura felt her face flush with embarrassment. I apologize, she said to the gathering. I was simply adjusting to the room temperature. The Equarry representative, a sleek blue-green being with large eyes, responded with a series of color patterns that translated as, perhaps we should focus on the negotiations rather than human biology. Their physical traits are irrelevant to the dispute at hand. Laura shot the Equarry a grateful look, but even this seemed to cause discomfort, as the amphibious being's skin flickered with rapid color changes. As the negotiations resumed, Eric attempted to demonstrate Earth's history of conflict resolution. He used his datapad to display images of historic human peace treaties and summits. On Earth, we've resolved many territorial disputes through compromise, he explained. Each side must feel they've gained something valuable. To illustrate further, he showed footage of the signing of a major Earth peace treaty that ended a regional conflict. Unfortunately, the presentation included brief historical context showing the war that preceded it. The images of human soldiers in combat, though only shown for a few seconds, caused visible distress among the delegates. They deliberately injure each other with primitive weapons. One delegate whispered loudly enough for the translation system to pick up. And they continue, fighting despite physical damage, another added with horror. Eric quickly switched off the footage. The point is that the conflict was resolved through dialogue, not violence, he said, trying to salvage the situation. The lead Vesperi negotiator chittered something that translated as, "We will not cede any portion of Axilian Fee's northern hemisphere. The mineral deposits there have been Vesperi property for 12 generations. The deposits extend under the oceans," countered the Aquari representative, its skin flushing deep blue. "Waters that have been Aquari territory since the Conclave's founding." As the two sides became increasingly hostile, hurling historical claims and counterclaims at each other, Laura noticed neither would look directly at the human delegation. Both species seemed to be positioning themselves as reasonable compared to the frightening humans. After 3 hours of circular arguments, Eric's patience wore thin. "This is getting us nowhere," he muttered to Laura. Finally, frustrated by the lack of progress, Eric stood up suddenly and slapped his hand on the table, for emphasis, a common human gesture when making a point. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every alien in the room flinched or recoiled. The Vesperi representatives raised their upper limbs in defensive postures. Several security officers moved closer to the walls, hands near their weapons. Complete silence followed as Eric realized his mistake. "I apologize," he said carefully, lowering himself slowly back into his seat. "I meant no threat." The head conclave moderator, whose feathers had puffed out in alarm, took a moment to compose himself. "Perhaps," he said cautiously, "we should recess until tomorrow. All parties need time to reflect." As they left the chamber, Laura overheard security personnel discussing containment protocols for the human delegation. Back in their quarters, the team gathered to assess the situation. "This isn't working," Kevin said. "We can't negotiate when everyone's terrified of us just being human." Laura paced the room, thinking. "Maybe that's it," she said suddenly. "Maybe we need to stop trying so hard not to be scary." Eric looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "If they're going to see us as dangerous predators no matter what we do, maybe we can use that perception," she explained. "Not to threaten, but to guide them toward peace." "I don't follow," Kevin said. Laura smiled, careful to keep her lips together. "Think about it. What scares them most about humans? Our history of warfare, our physical capabilities, our direct approach to problems. What if we show them that these same traits make us choose peace whenever possible?" Eric nodded slowly as he understood. "Because we know better than anyone how terrible war can be." "Exactly," Laura said. "Tomorrow we stop apologizing for being human. Instead, we use their perception of us to push for peace." As night fell on, Nexus Station, the human delegation prepared a new strategy, one that would embrace rather than hide their predatory reputation. The next morning, the human delegation arrived at the conference chamber with a completely different approach. Instead of trying to appear harmless, they walked with confident posture, wearing their formal dress uniforms with all medals and insignia displayed. Laura had suggested they move deliberately rather than timidly, not aggressive, but proud. As they entered, the usual hush fell over the room. This time, instead of trying to shrink and appear non-threatening, they stood tall. "Good morning," Eric said clearly, making brief eye contact with key delegates. He didn't smile, knowing now how teeth displays were received. Zextor hurried over, mandibles clicking nervously. "The delegates are concerned about your change in demeanor," he whispered. Several have asked if you are preparing for confrontation. We're simply being ourselves, Laura replied calmly. Please assure everyone we mean no harm. The session began with the same circular arguments between the Vesperi and Aquari. Neither side would compromise, each fearing it would show weakness, especially in front of the humans. After an hour of this, Eric requested permission to speak. The moderator granted it hesitantly. Eric stood slowly and addressed the gathering. On Earth, humans fought countless wars against each other. For thousands of years, we battled over territory, resources, and beliefs. The room grew even quieter. No one had expected the humans to openly discuss their violent history. We became very good at warfare, Eric continued. So good that we nearly destroyed ourselves several times. And then we realized something important. He paused, looking around the room. Every delegate was watching him with what might have been fear or fascination. We learned that true strength isn't shown by dominating others. True strength is choosing not to use force when you have that option. Peace isn't the easy path. It's the hardest one, requiring the most courage and discipline. Laura watched as the delegates exchanged glances and subtle communications. Eric's words were having an effect, though she couldn't tell yet if it was positive. The Vesperi and Aquari both want the resources of Exilion 4, Eric continued. Fighting over them would be easy. Finding a way to share them takes real strength. The lead Vesperi representative's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Vesperi do not fear conflict, its translator conveyed. We have defended our territories for generations. As have the Aquari, responded their representative, skin patterns shifting to bold blue stripes. We will not be intimidated into conceding our rightful claims. Sam Miller, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. With respect, no one is suggesting either side should surrender their claims. Ambassador Johnson is proposing you both win. This concept seemed to confuse the delegates. Laura seized the opportunity to build on Sam's point. On Earth, she said, standing beside Eric, we have a concept called mutual benefit. Instead of dividing resources, we sometimes create joint operations, where both parties contribute different strengths. She nodded to Kevin, who displayed a diagram he had prepared overnight. It showed a proposed mining operation on Exilion 4 with both Vesperi and Aquari sections. The Vesperi excel at extracting minerals from hard terrain, Laura explained. The Aquari have superior refining technology for these particular elements. Working together, you could extract more value from Exilion 4 than either could alone. The delegates studied the diagram with interest, though still warily. And what would humans gain from this arrangement? Asked the conclave moderator. A stable, region and trading partners, Eric replied simply. Earth is new to the galactic community. We need allies and commerce, not conflicts. During the midday recess, Laura and Eric were invited to separate private meetings with both disputing parties. Something Zexitor informed them was highly unusual. In a small chamber with the Vesperi delegation, Laura found herself surrounded by the insectoid aliens who still kept a careful distance from her. Your species confuses us, said the lead Vesperi representative. You display all physical traits of evolved predators, yet you advocate for cooperation rather than conquest. Laura chose her words carefully. Humans learned through painful experience that conquests are temporary. Cooperation builds lasting prosperity. She then described a concept from Earth's history that she thought might resonate with the hive-minded Vesperi. In the mid-20th century, human nations with terrible weapons faced each other in what we called mutually assured destruction. Both sides knew that starting a war would destroy everyone. We maintained peace not through trust but through understanding that conflict would be disastrous for all. The Vesperi's translator couldn't perfectly capture their response, but Laura sensed her words had impacted them. Later, meeting with the Aquari, she found them more receptive, but equally cautious. We have studied your Earth's oceans, the lead Aquari said, its skin rippling with patterns of light and dark blue. Your species cannot breathe water, yet you explore the deepest parts of your seas. You challenge natural boundaries. Humans are curious, Laura acknowledged. We want to understand everything, even environments that could kill us. That same curiosity helps us find unusual solutions to problems. By the end of the day, something had shifted. Both the Vesperi and Aquari had moved from absolute positions to considering the joint operation proposal. They still disagreed on specific terms, but the concept of cooperation was gaining traction. As the formal session concluded, the conclave moderator acknowledged the progress. Tomorrow we will discuss implementation details of the human proposal. Walking back to their quarters, Eric smiled slightly, forgetting momentarily about showing teeth. It's working, he said quietly. They're actually considering cooperation. I think they're more afraid of disappointing the scary humans than they are of working together, Sam joked. Laura was about to respond when an alarm blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors and a voice on the announcement system called for emergency protocols. What's happening? Kevin asked, looking around in confusion. Zexitor rushed toward them, all four arms gesturing urgently. We have a security breach. A radical Vesperi faction opposed to the peace agreement has infiltrated the station. They're threatening to disable life support systems. As if confirming his words, the lights flickered, and Laura felt a subtle change in the air circulation. They've already begun, Zextor said, mandibles clicking in alarm. Security forces are responding, but the saboteurs have locked themselves in the environmental control center. Laura and Eric exchanged looks. After spending days being feared for their human traits, perhaps now those same traits could prove useful. Take us there, Laura said firmly. We might be able to help. Zextor hesitated only briefly before nodding. Follow me, quickly. As they hurried through the corridors, emergency bulkheads began closing, sectioning off parts of the station to preserve atmosphere in case of catastrophic failure. The peace negotiations had just become a fight for survival. Zextor led the humans through increasingly chaotic corridors. Station personnel from various species rushed in all directions, some seeking safety, others responding to the emergency. Warning lights flashed, and periodic announcements in multiple languages urged calm. The environmental control center is on the lower level, Zextor explained as they entered a transport tube. The saboteurs have locked it down completely. They demand the peace talks be abandoned. When they reached the lower level, they found a security team gathered outside a sealed doorway. The team consisted of 6 different species, all looking concerned as a supervisor explained the situation. The atmosphere mix is already changing throughout the station, the security supervisor told them. Oxygen levels are dropping in sections, B through F. We estimate 3 hours before critical levels are reached. Can't you override the door controls? Eric asked. The saboteurs have physically severed the connection, the supervisor replied. We need to cut through, but it will take time. Laura studied the doorway, then looked at the nearby maintenance access panel. Is there another way in? Maintenance tunnels, air ducts, anything? Zextor's mandibles clicked nervously. There is a secondary maintenance shaft, but it's very narrow. None of our security personnel can fit through it. How narrow? Kevin asked. Zextor indicated a small hatch on the wall. It was designed for maintenance drones, not biological entities. Laura walked over and examined the hatch. It was small, but a human could squeeze through. I can fit, she said. Captain, the shaft runs through sections where atmosphere is already compromised, Zextor warned, and the temperature in those sections has dropped significantly as life support fails. How long would I have, Laura asked, with your respiratory system? Perhaps 3 to 4 minutes before you lose consciousness. Laura turned to her team. I need to try. If the saboteurs succeed, everyone on this station is at risk. Before anyone could object, alarms blared again and the lights dimmed further. The security supervisor received an urgent message through their communication device. The saboteurs have accelerated the process, they announced. Multiple sections are now losing pressure. As if to emphasize the point, emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the corridor, isolating them. We're sealed in, Sam said, looking around. And if I understand those readings correctly, we're already losing oxygen. Laura made her decision. I'm going through. Kevin, can you guide me using the station schematics? Kevin quickly accessed the station layout on his datapad. Yes, but Laura, this is extremely dangerous. No choice, she replied, already removing her uniform jacket to have more flexibility. "Eric, keep working with security on the main door." Before anyone could argue further, Laura opened the maintenance hatch and looked inside. It was narrow and dark, with only emergency lighting providing a dim red glow. She took several deep breaths to oxygenate her blood, then pulled herself into the shaft. The tunnel was barely wider than her shoulders. She had to wriggle and push forward using her elbows and knees. Kevin guided her through her earpiece. 20 meters straight ahead, then a junction. "Take the left path." Laura crawled forward, feeling the air getting noticeably thinner. The temperature was dropping rapidly, too. Her breath formed visible clouds in front of her face. The atmosphere. "Control room should be 10 meters past the next turn." Kevin's voice came through, now with static interference. Laura's lungs burned as she pushed forward. The cold was becoming painful and her fingers were growing numb. Just as Kevin had described, she found another junction and turned right. Ahead, she could see a service panel that should open into the back of the control room. With her remaining strength, she kicked the panel hard. It gave way after the third kick and she tumbled into the control room. 3 Vesperi saboteurs turned in shock as a human suddenly appeared from the wall. They had not expected anyone to access the room through such a small passage, especially not through sections with failing life support. Laura gasped for air, her face flushed from exertion and cold. To the Vesperi, she appeared as a predator in hunting mode. Eyes wide, breathing heavily, moving despite environmental conditions that should have incapacitated most species. 2 of the saboteurs backed away in terror. The third reached for a weapon. But Laura, running on adrenaline and instinct, moved faster. She grabbed the saboteur's arm and twisted using the unarmed combat training all Starfleet officers received. The Vesperi, despite its chitinous exoskeleton, found itself pinned against a control panel. "Stop this, now," Laura managed between gasping breaths. The other saboteurs raised their upper limbs in surrender, their mandibles clicking rapidly in what was clearly fear. One moved quickly to the main console and reversed the commands they had entered. Within minutes, the main door slid open, and security forces rushed in, followed by Eric, Kevin, and Sam. They found Laura sitting on the floor, still catching her breath, with 3 terrified Vesperi keeping their distance from her. "Captain Martinez," Eric said with relief, "are you all right?" Laura nodded, still too winded for words. Station security took the saboteurs into custody while technical teams worked quickly to restore normal environmental conditions. Word spread rapidly about what had happened, how the human captain had crawled through failing life support sections, endured cold that would immobilize most species, and single-handedly subdued 3 armed saboteurs. By the next day, when the peace talks resumed, the atmosphere had changed completely. Both the Vesperi and Aquari delegations treated the humans with a new kind of respect, still cautious but without the previous terror. The Vesperi Emperor himself addressed the gathering. "Yesterday's events have given us much to consider. The actions of Captain Martinez demonstrated something we had not understood about humans. Their physical capabilities, which we feared, were used not for dominance, but for protection of all." The Aquari Supreme Delegate's skin rippled with patterns of deep blue and gold, colors that translated as formal respect. "The humans risk themselves for a station of aliens who have treated them with suspicion. This is not the behavior of a species to be feared, but one to be valued." Within hours, both sides reached an agreement on Axilian 4 that incorporated the human proposal for joint operations, with additional provisions for shared security. As Laura and her team prepared to return to the USS Intrepid, Zextor approached them with a formal delegation of Conclave officials. "The Conclave Council wishes to present a formal request," Zextor said, his posture now showing respect rather than fear. "There are 17 ongoing conflicts across Conclave space that have resisted resolution for decades. Would Earth consider sending diplomatic teams to assist with these situations?" Laura and Eric exchanged surprised glances. "I believe that can be arranged," Eric replied carefully. "But may I ask why you've chosen humans for this role?" The head conclave representative, the feathered being who had moderated the peace talks, stepped forward. "Your species has a unique combination of traits. You understand conflict on a deep level, yet value peace. You possess physical capabilities that many find intimidating, yet use them with restraint. In our long history, we have found that the best peacekeepers are those who fully understand the cost of war. As the USS Intrepid departed Nexus Station, Laura stood at the viewport watching the massive structure grow smaller. "Who would have thought," she said to Eric, who stood beside her, "that accidentally terrifying the galaxy would make us its most valued diplomats?" Eric smiled, no longer worried about showing his teeth. Maybe that's exactly what they needed. Someone who knows how scary conflict can be. The ship engaged its drive system, leaving Nexus Station behind in a flash of light. Already, requests from a dozen worlds were coming in, all asking for the strange, frightening, yet oddly reassuring humans to help them find their path to peace.